How's it going, everybody? Welcome to week 8. We are halfway through the semester, so it's cruising right along. Hopefully you got a pretty good grasp of what's going on world history-wise. We're kind of wrapping up the second sort of part of this, epics and empires. You have your epic essay drafts complete. Just kind of some feedback. I'll start with the feedback on those. I've read over everyone's drafts, kind of gotten a sense of where everybody's at. Again, the main thing of a draft, you all have some words on paper, which is important and good. Kind of the two universal things I've been noticing and I've commented on this a lot is sort of the breadth of these of your papers. Again, you only have 1,000 words, so like the summary things. I know a lot of these epics are quite long. I understand that, so kind of maybe try to figure out how to summarize that succinctly. That's why I've also encouraged people to maybe pick a particular chapter or part of their epic, because then you can talk about the epic in general, but then narrow it down to, but this chapter I'm going to look at this. So that's good. I think historical context. Again, when was this thing written? Where was it written? And what was going on at that time in that area? So I think, again, people are getting a good idea there, particularly if what they were writing, the epic was being written at that time is very different than the setting of the epic. So that's a little bit of history too that people have been good at navigating through. So keep that in mind. And then the cultural significance stuff. Again, a lot of people listed a lot of cultural significance and different elements of that. You won't be able to pick all of those and discuss all of those in a 1,000-word essay. So that's why I would try to narrow that down to one point of cultural significance. And also that will help. Maybe you can then connect it back to the summary stuff. So be thinking about that. I mean, you can't list. A lot of people have these lists of cultural significance. Maybe that's just your thinking, but sometimes if you run this through AI, it's going to generate a bunch of lists. It loves these lists. That's great way to start, but your job as the author is to narrow that down and reflect. And as you're reading through your epic and get more familiar with it, then you can maybe pull out one of those ideas or one or two if they're really closely aligned. But you will have to give specific examples of your essay. In the final draft, as we'll see, you're going to need 3 direct quotes from your essay, from your epic itself. So that will be kind of how you can narrow down these ideas. There. So that's the drafts. Look them over. Good job. You have 2 more weeks. You have another week and a half for those to turn in. I think it's next Sunday. So that's that. And then this week we're kind of finishing up this epic and empire part. Again, this is kind of the busiest part of the semester. We've got a quiz this week. The good news is there's no writing component on the quiz. Just answer the questions, geography, fill in the blank, and matching should be pretty straightforward. All we're talking about this week is Greece and Rome, which maybe is a little more familiar with some people. If you ever read Percy Jackson, you know a little bit about the Greek religion and some epics, stories about these Greek gods. Greek history, kind of talked about from the Minoan to Mycenaean, and then the Greek city-states, sort of autonomy of there. There just wasn't a centralized empire till Alexander comes around and does it. The conflict between Athens and Sparta and the Delian League. And that's sort of in between the Persian Wars, the Peloponnesian Wars, where you have this sort of unity of Greece, and that's this sort of moment where you have a lot of these plays, sort of, again, a golden age, if you will, of Greek culture. A lot of the philosophers we have of that, or a lot of plays we have is in that sort of Delian League period. And then we get to the Roman Empire. Again, sort of this is, you can say these are sort of building. Rome was a small little city in Italy, and then over time grew and expanded, defeated Carthage, invaded Greece, and then ultimately took over Egypt. And that was how it became this large empire. So we talk about some features of the Roman Empire, their political structure. But really, it's this Mare Nostrum, their RC, their control of trade in the Mediterranean was how they flourished. And then within that, you have Christianity, right? And so Christianity is another world religion that will form within, kind of side by side with the Romans. So that's kind of the major topics for this week. Just have the quiz 2 on Friday. Should be pretty straightforward. Fill in your review terms and review guides by tonight, and then Great. And then the last thing I want to talk about, and this is also in the student resources, is the CAL frameworks. We're halfway through the semester. This is a good time to kind of zoom out, reflect a little bit. And again, the idea of this CAL framework from the Hawaii Community College perspective is that we're trying to kind of shift from this is college, get through it, to this in the story of your life. Hawaii Community College is going to be a chapter of that, right? You're here, you're there. So what can we do to make that story best resonate? And the CAL framework, CAL being a story, is that's kind of how we're looking at it. In the midweek right now, or the midpoint, right? We're in the Huakai section, the journey, the voyage. We're halfway through, as all voyages are. Sometimes there's smooth sailing, sometimes there's some rocky storms. Hopefully everything's relatively smooth on your end. But it's a good time to reflect. What have we done up till now, and what do we got to do to finish this out? So I posted 3 questions to kind of reflect on. You don't need to answer these or return them in. They're mainly for you. The first one is the hua, or what is your motivation? Now that we're halfway through, let's reflect back on that. What was it when we started, and how has it changed over time up till now? Is it the same? Are you still going through it, or have you modified it a little bit as the journey goes on? And then the second question I want people to reflect on is, what have you accomplished so far? I think sometimes in the journey, in the school, in the busyness, we forget to kind of like pat ourselves on the back. But what have you done? You've been here 8 weeks. What are you proud of? What have you, and it can be in this class, it could be in another class, it could be totally outside of school. But in the last 8 weeks, right, really just spend some time to think about, what have you done well, right? Sometimes it's easy to dwell on the bad things and things that you wish you did better, but take a minute to hey, you've done things in the last 8 weeks. And then the last part is, we have 8 more weeks left. What's one thing you need to do to succeed, right? Now that you have the routine, you see where things are and how to kind of sort of manage everything. What's one thing you need to really focus on? Okay, this is something I can do better to get to the end of the semester. So, yeah, kind of the CAL framework. I think that it's always a good time to reflect. And again, we got a big push. 8 more weeks in this class. This is really kind of the hard part of it, this quiz and then the epic essay. Once you get through this, it should be pretty smooth sailing here. Just basic history stuff, which I think is fun. I'll try to bring up interesting stuff, but that's kind of it. So yeah, just push through this little section here, and then the rest of it, the winds will carry you right into the holidays. All right, have a good rest of your week.